Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first poster session Q&A for the Peralta Online Equity Conference of 2023. Right now, we're joined by three different sets of posters. One by the Colorado Community College System, establishing course quality standards to support equitable and learner-centered experiences at the Colorado Community College System. One by California State University, Monterey Bay, digital accessibility and equity, building self-paced professional development opportunities for faculty. And last but not least, Goodwin University out in Connecticut, engaging student voice and choice, applying the UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, framework to redesign course assessments for learner variability. Just a couple housekeeping tips before we get started. The captions are running, so if anyone wishes to use them, please just use that show captions button at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, or if your screen is minimized a little bit, it might be hidden under the more button that's got the three dots. And we are encouraging people to use the chat for comments, questions, and sharing resources that might relate to the speaker's ideas. And I think we can get started. So let's maybe work our way from east to west, starting with Goodwin folks out in Connecticut, engaging student voice and choice, applying the UDL framework to redesign course assessments for learner variability. Annjanette and Karrie, why don't you maybe give us a brief overview of your topic, and then we'll open it up for questions and just a brief conversation, and then maybe at the 15-minute mark, we'll jump to Colorado.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you very much for having us today. I'll just kind of give you a little bit of a background. My name is Karrie Morin. I'm the director of the Center for Teaching Excellence at Goodwin University. My colleague and counterpart here, Annjanette Bennar, runs our program, the math department, communications and computer science programs. So we've joined together. We actually are very fortunate to have embraced Universal Design for Learning as a university. We had the several UDL cohorts that have gone through since 2017 or 2018. Our president at the time was very much in support of UDL. We've trained many different faculty members, both adjunct and full-time faculty, in the Universal Design for Learning framework and principles. And just this past fall, Annjanette and I had the privilege of being selected for the Advanced UDL Institute for Goodwin University. So we got to kind of even delve deeper into our knowledge of UDL, our course design, curriculum design, and things like that. So it was really a privilege and a benefit for us to do that. So during that time, Annjanette and I started looking at some of the course assessments, and we decided what we would really like to do is again, account for that learner variability and offer our students various ways to respond, giving them, like it says in our title, both voice and choice. I'll start with mine if you'd like to hear that first, and I can let Annjanette speak for her project that she had done in her course as well. So very high level, I teach in the communications department. I teach COM 101, COM 105. The course I'm focusing on is COM 105. It's an interpersonal communication course. A lot of freshman level students will take this course. And since I had the background in UDL already, I designed the course in a way, again, adding a lot of the UDL elements to it. So offering students voice and choice, autonomy, things like that. So with the Advanced UDL Institute, though, I took a deeper dive into discussion boards. After the pandemic, some of you may have the same experiences that asynchronous learning, even synchronous learning online, is very challenging and different than an on-ground class. And so although I always loved to teach on ground, kind of had to adjust, obviously, to the new normal after the pandemic. So I looked at ways that I could increase engagement and give students more ways to express themselves in their assessments through the discussion boards in particularly an asynchronous COM class. By doing that, I decided that because it's a communication class, not only would I be developing their skills, just communication skills in general, but some of the soft skills, like how do they present themselves? How do they position themselves in the Zoom window if they have to get prepared for maybe an interview or for something job related? So I started where I had them create videos to post as a response to the discussion boards. So I would offer a question or two, I would give them guiding questions for the reading, and then prompts for the discussion board. And they were required to post a video. But I decided that some of my students wanted additional options, more creativity. And so basically decided to give them 3 options. And that's what you'll see when you take a look at our poster. You'll see the 3 options that I provided for my students. So when they are given the discussion board prompt, they are required to either do a quick video, like a 2 to 3 minute video addressing the questions in the discussion board, or they can do a graphic expression where they can take an image, something that resonates with them that relates to the discussion board prompts, and then do a brief write-up, maybe 100 to 200 words regarding that image, or the traditional text variant, so they can just write a text response if they'd like. And it really kind of built a lot of their soft skills in addition to the criteria that I wanted them to learn. So I found it to be very engaging. The students really liked the different modalities that they could respond. It made the discussion board in a traditionally, challenging asynchronous environment to be a little bit more engaging. The students like to look at the other students' videos. They like to see what other graphics the other students would put up there in the discussion board. And it actually became quite fun and exciting. And they were looking forward to, posting their prompts and then responding to students. And it actually worked out very, very well for the asynchronous course that I taught last fall, in the fall semester. So that's how I kind of took a discussion board, which is originally, challenging in that environment, and made it into something much more engaging for our students. So Annjanette took a little bit different approach, so I'll let her talk to that one.
So I had a digital literacy class that, just like Karrie, I have the UDL background, so I built it with UDL in mind. But I, just knew there was more that I could do to it. And one of the things that I wanted to look at, one of the assessments, was the final assessment, because I realized while taking a deeper dive into my class that I only gave them 2 weeks to complete the whole project, and it was pretty substantial. So I went back to look through and see what I could do. And through using the UDL guidelines and the principles, I ended up scaffolding the project a little bit more. I made a graphic, which you'll also see on the poster, a kind of guided template to plan the project, and then also added some journal responses, early in the semester, so they had a chance to start to look at it and start to plan ahead. And I think it worked well this semester. It seemed like the students were not as stressed out to get the information ahead of time and begin to think about it. So that's just a brief overview. Sorry, I'm putting a link in the chat. It is for our Goodwin Institute for Learning Innovations, which is what we use for our UDL training. We've also had 6 cohorts of faculty go through, like Karrie mentioned. I'm actually a co-facilitator of one of them. So we are definitely a UDL university. We live and breathe it, and we love to share it. So does anyone have any questions?
Well, first, I posted the link to the PDF of your poster in the chat for those who might not have seen it. It's also on the website. As someone who's tried to apply UDL to my own class, Karrie, I love the ideas that you've put around your discussion, and I'm wondering, what was the tipping point to actually get the students to engage? Because I've tried a number of strategies, providing them opportunities to use text plus images, video, to kind of make it according to UDL, giving them multiple pathways to engage with one another. And like Annjanette, even having multiple pathways for them to do a large scale project. So now I've allowed them to basically submit their work that they're doing piecemeal throughout the term as the pieces that they put in their portfolio for the end of the semester, with tweaks if they wish, based on the feedback I give them and all that. But I'm just curious for both of you that as many options as we give, sometimes it's really hard to get them to come to the table, right? It's the horse and the water and the drinking and all that stuff. So
Yes.
any tips or tricks you have for us?
I do have something for you. One course that I taught like a while back, I always kind of, when I think of UDL, I always think of UDL as breaking down barriers, removing barriers to learning and trying something new. So one thing that I found that really worked with a lot of my students was I took the first step, or I started creating videos. Okay, here's like subject content video of, you know, this week's topic, or video announcements. And so I explained to them that I was trying something new. I was going to take a risk. I was going to create these videos for them so they could see me, see my face, hear a little bit about me, and then make it a little bit less intimidating than if they wanted to try something like a video as well. So I would always test the waters myself first, I guess you could say, before asking them to do that.
And funny, Karrie, I was going to say the same thing, that I think that making the video announcements, which is something that we started, doing a weekly overview, and I'm not explaining, you know, I just show them what's due, but I think having that personal connection makes them want to be a little bit more personal. And actually, I do offer choice in my discussion boards too. And some of the feedback I got was that they want that maybe I should make one of them mandatory so we can all see each other. And I thought that I had 2 or 3 people do that. So I think that might be something that I'll try, just, you know, so everybody tries to extend themselves and then let them have their options.
I could imagine that making video mandatory might be more equitable if you say you could also use a screencast where you don't have to be on camera for people who have challenges with either their environment, their self-image, or what have you. So, but I love the idea of making a video required. And then I guess the last equity challenge would be access. Do they have a tool that allows them to make videos in the first place? So
We actually, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
I was going to say, we actually, and I think Annjanette is about to say the same thing that I'm going to say. We have Canvas is what we use for our student learning management system. And in Canvas, it has Canvas Studio kind of built into it. So it has that availability for the students to be able to go ahead and create their videos right within the LMS and then just post them right on the discussion board. So it works out really, really nicely.
Right. I'm thinking more of, do they have a device that with a camera embedded?
Oh, I see.
Many people do, but I just don't like to assume, because I think it's still only around 90% of students have smart devices. And so if they're using a library computer to do their schoolwork or something like that, they might not have a camera.
Right.
Amanda asks, how do you ensure that learners who are expressing in alternate modalities, such as in discussion, do not exclude their peers from conversation with their ideas by asking learners to practice accessibility strategies? I'm going to let the Goodwin folks answer that, and then I've got an idea.
Yeah. Okay, no, can you explain?
Yeah, I mean, I guess specifically I'm thinking about asking learners to post alt text, use captions, things like that. I teach a class on UDL, a grad class in an instructional design program. So, I mean, that's part of what I share as an expectation, like to help normalize those strategies as well. Because I know in our system, we work with a lot of faculty, and, you know, who are like, I don't know how to do that. Why is it important? Why do I have to do it? How do I do it? So kind of starting with my students, I'm like, I would love for you, I invite you to express, you know, your response in an infographic and something imagistic and video, but we also want to make sure we're not excluding any potential audience members either in doing so. But part of me then thinks, well, at what point would that be a reason why someone doesn't choose to engage in a different modality? Because I'm asking them to ensure that they're being inclusive with it. But I think that's so important. I don't want to say, oh, well, you don't have to ensure that your captions are. So that's the kind of puzzle that I'm trying to get at here.
A couple things that I do. Oh, go ahead, Karrie.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, I think that's a very good question because you bring up a lot of excellent points. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Kevin.
So I teach an undergrad class called How to Learn with Your Mobile Device. So it's a general ed course, but it's focused on technology. I call it hiding the broccoli under the cheese. They come for the mobile device, but they learn how to learn along the way. But like Amanda, because UDL is such a big thing for me, I tell them up front, hey, universal design for learning, I'm providing you multiple pathways to communicate with one another, but that means we also want to provide multiple pathways to make sure all of your colleagues and classmates succeed. And so I give them, like when I started saying, use this discussion forum, and this is before we moved to Canvas, we would use Flipgrid. And then now it's called Flip, but it has a tutorial on how to edit your captions. And so I would tell them, this supports not only students who are deaf and hard of hearing, but also students who might be learning English as a second or third language, people who prefer to read instead of listen. So please take the time. These videos are 2 to 3 minutes long. It shouldn't take you very much time. And when we use VoiceThread, I encourage them to type out their ideas first as a script. And then when they do the video, they just post the text. It's almost like a transcript and the video. And they end up with more succinct responses as a result as well.
I really like all those ideas. I'm definitely going to go back and rethink some of the things. Being that I'm in a digital literacy class, I kind of have free reign to teach a little bit more extra, and maybe that is something that I'll look into is, adding the alt text and showing them where to do that, and just being more intentional with why we're doing what we're doing with the videos.
Great. Well, in the spirit of time, keep the questions coming in the chat for Annjanette and Karrie. And as I mentioned, at the 15-minute mark each time, we'll head eastward. So now we're going to join our friends in Colorado. And I think Veronica is more east than Amanda. So Veronica, will have your name first. Veronica and Amanda, again, their conversation is going to be about establishing course quality standards to support equitable and learner-centered experiences. So take it away.
Okay, with that said, Veronica and I did work it out that I was going to introduce our project first. So I will put in the Google Doc link. I sure hope when I sent this in, it had all alt text and everything and the images. I hope that's still preserved in the Google slides. But what we want to share is just the project that we've been working on for kind of a couple of years now, as the Colorado Community College system has been kind of shifting toward a consortial model, collaboration across all of our 13 community colleges, including Northeastern Junior College, where Veronica is located, to deliver online courses to students across the whole state in a more equitable fashion. And Veronica, again, is representing one of our rural colleges as well. So this effort is probably near to her heart, which she can speak to. I'll stop speaking on behalf of her. In any case, our project is part of the Learning Design subcommittee of this project. Our work group was tasked with creating base course standards for designing and delivering those online courses. So anyone here familiar with Quality Matters rubric? I see some nods. So our system was already kind of invested in Quality Matters. But what our work group discovered as we looked at kind of what the goals of the consortium would be, what were sort of the diverse demographics represented in our Colorado Community College system, we realized that as much as we felt like Quality Matters was giving us a lot we could work with, there are gaps as well. So, I mean, if this resonates with you, you can also nod, like there are some gaps in Quality Matters. And I'm just pulling out one image from the presentation in case you're a visual learner, just to identify what those gaps were. So we did various research across different rubrics, different best practices in the literature, in the field of design and online pedagogy, and found that while we did gain a lot of great things from Quality Matters, like measurable objectives and alignment, there was this whole broad area that Quality Matters just doesn't really yet address super well, right? And that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Veronica will talk more about how Peralta Online Equity Rubric was one of the key sources that we explored to kind of just help us consider, well, what could some of those best practices look like that we're seeing in the literature? How might that look if incorporated into rubric, as well as Karrie and Annjanette were just speaking about the Universal Design for Learning framework. I'm holding that as separate from Peralta, although the online equity rubric acknowledges UDL. Of course, there's just so much to UDL framework than just the idea of multiple means of representation and expression. So what we did was kind of carefully crosswalk Quality Matters to a lot of the different other ideas that we saw in things like Peralta and things like UDL and other sources in the literature. And not to throw anything away from Quality Matters, but to add to it. So the problem, I guess, that resulted from that is that we made an already large rubric larger by identifying a lot of plus elements from 42 standards in Quality Matters to like 66, right? So then what we had to do, I'll give you just another image pulled out from the presentation, is we had to collapse all of that again and say, you know, it's really good to be able to, at a granular level, identify exactly what we're looking for where, but our faculty, instructors, we can't use this. It's just too overwhelming. Quality Matters in itself is too overwhelming. So we had to collapse it down. And that's where our group ended up developing what we call the Healthy Course Checklist, which is based on Quality Matters Plus or QM Plus, but it's just meant to be just simplified, a little more high level comprehensive, but in doing so, it ends up being just a little more usable. So when we collapsed it down into Healthy Course Checklist criteria, we were able to pull out what we wanted to elevate as those gaps that we had seen in QM. So there's an entire criterion, an entire category dedicated to strategies that pertain to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and another group of strategies that kind of ended up being a catch-all for like other things that weren't necessarily identified elsewhere, but some other universal design for learning strategies that we like related to executive functioning and supporting transfer of concepts, comprehension, those sorts of things. Active and authentic learning. Authentic learning was really important to some of the stakeholders who were giving us feedback, various active learning strategies. So those two categories. The Peralta rubric, I'm going to transition over to you now, Veronica, was really informing specific strategies in the 5th criterion here for DEI.
Thank you, Amanda. Yes, as Amanda said, Peralta was one of the sources that we used as we tried to more thoroughly integrate DEI considerations into our course design. And so in the slides, which Amanda linked up for you, on slide 9, you can really see how we started to do this. And so on the Peralta rubric, for example, E5 says, you know, images and representations in the course reflect broad diversity. What we actually have in our QM Plus standards includes representation of diverse perspectives and cultures. The Peralta E4, communications activities demonstrate students' diverse identities and these are valued. We invite learners to respectfully share their diverse identities, applications, examples, and resources. One of the things I think about with that, and it ties into the great session I was just in before this with University of Nebraska, Abby and Amy, and I'm blanking on last names, had this great presentation on including transgender and non-binary students. One of our standards is 1.9 in QM has learners introduce themselves. We added that learners are encouraged to share their preferred names and pronouns. So it's things like that, and that is reinforced throughout. And that's our chance for them to show their diverse identities and to value them per Peralta. And the Peralta E3 is course content and activities show multiple means of representation, action, expression, and or engagement. And so we have multiple means of representation, actions, and expression per UDL. The next slide is slide 10, and these are all in what Amanda linked up there. And we gave the example of QM standard 4.5, which is a variety of instructional materials are used in the course. This kind of shows where we needed to build on QM just a bit. Oh, thank you, Kevin. I could not remember all the details. But one of the things that we noticed about QM is a variety of instructional materials is used in the course. You could have textbooks, videos, and all these things by cis straight men. And so you can have a variety of instructional materials that reaches a variety of learning preferences and yet still not be amplifying DEI, that you could have something that's done totally by cis white straight men that really is not recognizing the contributions of various groups. And so we decided to unpack that and add a few additional standards. So keeping with QM, they're all standard 4.5, but then we do a plus. And so I'm going to focus on 4.5C plus and 4.5D plus to start. 4.5C plus, instructional materials represent a diversity of perspectives, including historically marginalized voices. And standard 4.5D plus, instructional materials exhibit diverse demographic representation that disrupts harmful stereotypes and biases. So it is really choosing instructional materials that still meet the learning objectives, but do so by giving different points of view and showing a diversity of viewpoints and perspectives, etc. And the rest of those, if you're curious, 4.5B plus is incorporating open educational resources where possible. So like they said in 4.5, the original QM standard, it's just a variety of instructional materials. We added the OER where possible because, as most of you probably know, textbook costs create a huge equity issue that some students simply cannot afford it. There are a bunch of tragic studies that have been done about students who are faced with, do I get food or do I pay for books? Do I buy, they look at childcare versus books, all these sorts of things. And so really trying to use the OER helps with that. And 4.5A plus, variety of instructional materials in each module allows some degree of student choice, such as meeting learning objectives through text versus oral or visual materials. This is just recognizing that students have different learning preferences and really trying to create instructional materials that allow students to choose whichever works best with their own learning preferences. And so that is kind of how we unpacked QM to more thoroughly integrate DEI, and Peralta really helped with our work in that area. So I will hand it back to Amanda if there's anything she has to wrap it up.
Yeah, I would just note, since I think the next pair speaking is talking about professional development opportunities too. We've developed an informational module that we pushed out to all 13 colleges to implement as they see fit. But this particular image that Veronica was just talking about is one of the really sticky points where we get a lot of pushback as well from faculty. And we've gotten requests to say, like, what does this look like in X discipline, this, that, or the other discipline? So the last professional development that we've been working on providing has been to select different demo courses from a variety of disciplines to as the basis for a professional development workshop to try to unpack this more. Like, what does this mean in math? What does this mean in tech writing? What does this mean in, so that, those who are from a liberal arts field may find this to be a little easier or more native to certain disciplines than others. So we definitely have some work to do in terms of professional development as well.
Questions and
happy to hear
comments,
them.
right? I was about to say that we did the same at Peralta with the equity training that goes with the rubric. We found that it wasn't enough. So we started building a library, not of full courses, but of course elements, either a course material or a course activity or a course assessment that aligned with one or more of the rubric criteria. And we annotated them so that people could see the why it was being placed in this library. And we did like you, because it's a community college district, like you all have are a system. So we had things ranging from construction management to biology, STEM, CTE, and then the liberal arts and humanities, so that people could see it in their own context and say, oh, I can do that too. Questions for Amanda and Veronica? Other than, when do you sleep? This looks like a lot of work.
It's been a lot of work over just about a year and a half. So yes, we started our work with crosswalking and everything in the fall of 21. So
I wanted to add a comment on something that Amanda was saying earlier about QM and the number of standards and adding to that. And I just wanted to say that I relate to that in such a deep way, because we are also following the QM stuff at our campus. And that has been, it's a challenge because there's so many items on the rubric, but they're also important. And so, but I also see the opportunity to add to it. And yeah, that is something that we are experiencing, and I sympathize and appreciate that work.
And I will say that is something we got some pushback on. The people who are really, really invested in QM, when we were sharing this out with the system, they're all, no, QM's great. And it's like, well, they could do a lot more for DEI. I'm interested to see what the newest edition of the rubric looks like, but to see if they've included that comes out this summer. But that was one of those that we got pushback on. People were like, no, QM, it's really, really set up. We don't need to mess with it at all. You know, and it's like, oh, given that we have a focus as a system, and that actually HLCR accreditor has it in their plan, is this focus on equity. It's like, yeah, we might want to look at how we can increase equitable and inclusive opportunities for our students.
And it's, I don't think it's just Quality Matters that's doing that. I know that the SUNY Oscar rubric is also making strides, and they're actually presenting later today. I think it's at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. There's a DEI collaborative that is taking a look across multiple rubrics, the Quality Matters, the Oscar, the Cal State, what's called COLT, Quality Learning and Teaching, and then Peralta rubric, and how they can create a database of, hey, these are instructional strategies. Here's ways that you can infuse diversity, equity, and inclusion into those. It's an interesting project, but I think even CAST from Universal Design for Learning has a new Equity Rising hashtag, and they've been working on infusing their principles with more equity that expand beyond what many people see traditionally as accessibility focus, even though they say it's teach every student was their original mantra back in the 80s and 90s. That's fantastic. Thank you, Amanda and Veronica. And so for our last group, we'll head all the way west to California. Actually, go any further west and you're in the water, because Cal State Monterey Bay literally is a coastal town. But Laura and Luz, you two are going to share your experiences with digital accessibility and equity, building self-paced professional development opportunities for faculty. The mic is yours.
So I'm Laura, and very happy to be here. So I'm an instructional designer for the Center for Academic Technologies at CSU Monterey Bay, and I'm also a lecturer for the School of Computing and Design. And I'll let Luz introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. You've heard my name. I'm Luz Española. I am the accessibility specialist here on our campus at CSU Monterey Bay, and about a year ago or so, I was also previously an instructional designer, and I also am a guest lecturer for the School of Computing and Design. And so we're here today because we developed and delivered a training to support our faculty on our campus regarding how to create accessible content. With the shift with what happened and all of us going online, it became ever so more important to know, how do you build as a content creator, first becoming aware you are now a content creator, how do you make that content accessible? So
Yeah,
I guess, do you want to, go ahead.
Yeah, so that was the big push on our campus, was to begin equipping faculty with the technical skills that they needed to make their content accessible. We were all pushed, to deliver content online. So many people did not have the time or the knowledge in making content accessible. So we saw this as a need for our campus. There were a ton of new accommodation requests that were coming forward, where students needed to have the content delivered digitally. So we wanted to, again, equip them with those skills, train them in the importance of making that content accessible for all students. And we saw this as a big opportunity to bring in those equity principles with UDL. And so that's really what we did. We created a fully self-paced, or now it has been adapted to be fully self-paced online course, and it had multiple tracks. And I'll let Luce talk. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the Summer Institute, because this is where we first rolled it out. So we have a Summer Institute on our campus. Now, I come from the California Community College system, and in that system, there's Flex for faculty, which is kind of some level of built-in incentives for faculty to participate in professional development opportunities like this one. In the Cal State system, we don't have that. Right. And so if you don't have something in your contract, it's hard to incentivize participation in faculty development opportunities, especially one that was this challenging, especially over the summer when they're supposed to be taking care of themselves. Right. So for us, what we did was we have a Summer Institute that is every year, and we have multiple tracks in that Summer Institute. And so we lobbied the provost to provide funding for successful completion of that course. So we kind of leaned into the existing infrastructure that we had, and that's where we wanted to drive people to participate. And I'll let Luce talk a little bit more about the actual course tracks.
Yeah, so we had 2 tracks, and we wanted to give them the option to choose the difficulty level, the experience that they wanted to have with this topic, or this information. And so the first track was we called it Clearing the Path for Accessibility. And it really was just one day of listening in to a guest speaker that we had from Virginia Tech. Crystal Miller is, I believe now she's like the associate director for their student disability resources office. I might be misnaming their office, but it holds those types of services for students. But she's a great speaker, just so knowledgeable and so good with just being able to touch on a subject that sometimes can be touchy for faculty in regard to how they should create their courses and how they should teach. And so we brought her in, and that first track was really just listening in on that guest speaker, and then having them share their thoughts about what they learned from what she shared, but having a discussion around what their thoughts are and how they could apply what they learned from her presentation to what they're already doing in their classroom. The second track was called Demystifying Accessibility. And this was actually a little more intense. This was the second track, and it was held over 5 days. And we estimated it was about 8 hours of work every day. And pretty much what they got to do in this course was they were introduced to the technical practices of creating digital content in Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Google Docs, slides, and using Canvas. That's our learning management system. Also using Canvas in being able to learn how to use the digital tools in creating content. And we've covered basic principles for accessibility in these platforms. And along with that, we also introduced them to the built-in accessibility checkers in some of these platforms as well. And do you want to So that's a little introduction of what those 2 tracks were about.
Yeah, the first one was really all about building that awareness, right? Awareness of these principles, how they benefit students, how designing for those in the margins benefits all the students. And then the second one was, again, very, very technical. Here's how you use the remediation tools that you have at your disposal, including the Canvas built-in accessibility checker. We also went over Ally and how to use that. And, here's the fastest way that you can drive up that accessibility score. We kind of wanted to scaffold this around like those little wins, right? So that it wasn't an overwhelming process of remediation, but just building in that level of support and basic familiarity so that it felt doable.
And to add to that, I think it's really important. Sorry, like I have to add this, is that something really important is just in our experiences and dealing with faculty on this topic is that you're going to get 2 types of emotions, right? Either they're going to be on board and they're, yes, great, what can I do? Or you get the chill. You get this look like, what are you talking about? You're giving me extra work. So it was really important that in building this that we brought in humor in the content and we made it lighthearted. And we found that we had a lot of success just after we surveyed our learners, we found a lot of success and just positive comments about working with the content and learning these concepts. And again, it was really important for us to humanize this experience, because a lot of times when you're learning the technical stuff, it can be cold. It can just, it's not fun. That's some of the feedback we've gotten back in prior trainings. And so it was really important for us to humanize this experience for our learners.
Absolutely. So to talk a little bit about our success metrics. So the first metric that we have is our overall completion rate for this course. For track 1, which is all about building awareness, it was like 1 day commitment. We had 25 participants. 18 of them completed and 7 of them did not. So they didn't, either attend or they did not complete the assignment that was due, like a reflection assignment. But the much more demanding track, and this surprised me, to be honest with you, the much more demanding, way harder, multiple assignments, way more challenging. We had 42 participants and 40 of those successfully completed. That's pretty good. We felt really good about that.
Yes.
And so overall, our percentage of successful completions was 86%. So people were really prepared. Some of the assignments that we put into these courses, so you get an idea of the assessments that we built into this. We gave folks kind of a lecture overview of, one day it was about designing accessible presentations in PowerPoint and Google Slides. So we give them an overview about how to do that, accessibility barriers, things to look out for. And then we gave them a practice assignment where they were given a slide deck to remediate. And then they, and again, that was a practice opportunity. And then we gave them like the key, right? So we gave them a remediated version and an unremediated version with all those, errors embedded. So that way they could compare and see where they went wrong. They would post screenshots of how they did when they ran their accessibility checker, depending on what system they use. And then we would have them actually do an assignment. And that's where they would, again, take the screenshots and share that. So that way they were having a discussion with each other about what was difficult, what was surprising, what did they enjoy, things like that. So it was a really active course. So when we're talking about we were assessing their ability to remediate, we really were. We made sure that they could do those basics with the tools that they were given, and then reflecting and discussing this with each other. So I know that we talked about this being an asynchronous opportunity. So when we had this during a live, so everything was asynchronous, but there were deadlines, within that week. So that way people were able to participate actively in the discussion forums. But we have since adapted this, and we'll talk a little bit more about our continued journey. We've since adapted it to be fully self-paced. So that way we, instead of discussions, they are doing personalized reflections. So they're able to, run those accessibility checkers, analyze where they're weak, what things are challenging and how they need, what support they need to improve. And that's where we can come in with those live opportunities where we can work with them individually and get them up to speed. We also did two things in this course. We did a pre-course survey to see what their familiarity was with the concepts, basic key terms and things like that. Thanks, Kevin. And then we had a post survey to see kind of where they assessed their abilities. It was a little more qualitative, but the feedback was overwhelmingly positive, and they felt that they were better prepared to create and to remediate digital content to make it more accessible. And they were really able to demonstrate that through the course. So it wasn't just, I feel better about it. That was good to know that they felt better about it, of course, but it was really cool to see that they could do these tasks. That was really exciting. So I'll let Luz talk a little bit about what we're doing now.
So we've added to, so what we've decided to do is we actually have a Quality Matters grant, and we're applying now. And so we're looking to add this as an additional piece to that training. And so we're waiting for approval to make that happen. We are also this summer providing this again. But we are in competition with other tracks that are being created for their professional development. So we may have to we may have to cut it down in size, but we're going to keep the most important basic information still available, the most needed information available as a learning opportunity. And am I missing anything else, Laura? I think those are the two that I can think of.
Yeah, that's one of the ways that we're doing it. And another thing that's been really interesting and really exciting for both of us has been the level of student interest in this course. That's been, I think that's really special. So in my lectures, I often will bring up accessibility and equity. I work, like I said, I work in the School of Computing and Design, and I have a pro seminar course. So students are evaluating the industry, where they fit into the industry. These are web design students, graphic design. These are also video game design students. And many of them have not even heard of the term accessibility. And so we bring those things into the curriculum and say, hey, we now have this resource for you. And we don't have the time to, grade every student, right, who's interested in this course, but we keep the course and we have it available as like a preview version where they can watch the lectures and they can engage in their own self-reflection. They're not going to get individualized feedback, but it's a totally optional thing that they can do, and just acquaint themselves with accessibility principles and why it's so important. So we really think that student interest in this, given that it's not paid, not incentivized, they're genuinely interested in this. And they know it's also a skill that they can add to their resume. So that has been really exciting to kind of scale up the usage in kind of a non-traditional way from our faculty development perspective. And one more thing that I wanted to share with you, which was kind of the whole point of our presentation, is that we have the course for you all. You are so welcome to grab it, adapt it, use it. It's we have it shared under a share alike non-commercial license. So you are so welcome to, we have a form that you guys can fill out, and we will, we just ask some basic information like, how do you plan to use the course? You plan to use it with faculty, staff, students, that kind of stuff. When do you plan to use it? And so we will gladly send that course to you. It is a Canvas course package, an IMSCC file, and again, just attribution, and we will be super happy for you guys to take it and adapt it and use it at your own institutions.
Wow. Wrapping up with a freebie. And that's no small gift, because we know how much work goes into those courses. And so having done the same with the Peralta online equity training, it's nice to be able to not force others to reinvent the wheel, but it's also like, we need to acknowledge the work that goes into that. And so thank you up front.
Yeah.
And I put in the chat, if you want me to post the link for those who are watching the recording or people who come across the poster session page, we can do that as well. I know that there's no session in this room at 12 noon Pacific or 3 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Mountain, because we do have our friends in Colorado here too. So we don't have to end at the normal 45-minute mark, but I do want to respect that you all may have things in 10 minutes to attend, whether it be the Peralta Equity Conference or a meeting for your work. I'm going to at least officially close this and turn off the recording, but I'm going to keep the room open for continued conversation. I can't imagine a better group of posters to be in the same time slot because there was so much synchronicity. So thank you all for the work that you did pre-recording your sessions, for coming and doing this live session. And I hope that we get more folks because we do have 875 people registered for this thing. Hopefully people will come knocking at your door asking you questions. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
You.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.